everyone to the symposium where we're here to talk about building a culture of leadership development for the new workforce. I'm Derek Higgs. I'm a learning consultant here at PuzzleHR, and you guys are in for a treat. We have Lonnie Ostrander, who is the CEO and one of the key founders of Puzzle. Welcome, Lonnie.
Hey, Derek, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Not bad, not bad.
Is that,
I'm
is
uh,
that
I'm ready to talk some leadership.
Are you really? Awesome,
Yeah.
awesome, awesome. Well, we're here to talk about building a culture of leadership development for that new workforce. You know, those millennials, the Gen Zers, and so on and so forth. But before we dive in, talk to me about how leadership impacts the workforce. You're sitting up here, I'm down here somewhere. So talk to me about how leadership impacts the workforce.
Well, you're like 6'6", and I'm maybe 6 foot. So you're more here than there. So, hey, look, how does leadership look to me when you look at companies and the success that companies have? I think there's a direct correlation to how good their leadership team is. So we'll talk a little bit about that today. I think some of the things as you look at it in an overview perspective, working with a maybe a younger workforce, I think a lot of the principles are universal. So I don't think and based on the types of companies also and what industries they're in, it can be predominantly all the young workforce working there, and in others it's a mixture. So we'll talk a little bit about it, but let's define leadership. So two different ways I looked at kind of leadership. The way I kind of defined it, and I looked at a couple different articles, and one was from Northeastern University, and I just like what they said. They said there's 5 common traits to a good leader. Number one was be self-aware. I think that's so important. We talked about EQ, right, Derek? We talked about
Yeah,
EQ a
yeah.
couple times this week, me and you. EQ is so important. You have to know, who you are and how you're viewed. I think is critical in as far as what a leader needs to have. You have to focus on others. So when you think about it, it is a somewhat selfless job many times being a manager or a leader, because you're putting your people before you, and the
Mhm.
best people do that continuously. So that was number 2. Number 3 is be strategic thinker. So when you think about leadership, to me, leadership means I'm thinking out, thinking further out. There's a great book John Maxwell had, and it talked about people basically climbing to the top of the tree so they could see where they were going. That's leadership. Being able to look further out than just where you are today is where you're taking people. Number 4 was they have to have a ethical element to them. So we can talk about all these other great things, but if you're lacking in ethics, that's probably going to throw everything else out that we're talking about. That was number 4. And number 5 is great communication skills. So you need to be able, as a leader, to communicate well. I think some of that ties into the first one, which was EQ, which was really important. But those were the 5 elements. And I kind of like those elements. I defined it this way, that a leader creates a productive, effective, accountable, and safe environment for people to come to work, to achieve their goals, and to want to come back the next day. And I say it many different ways, but to me that kind of capsulizes what I've always looked for in leadership.
Awesome, awesome. So when you think about leadership, when you think about, back in its infancy, when you guys first envisioned creating Puzzle, think about where we are now, hundreds of employees and so on and so forth. When you guys first had that vision, did you envision having a older workforce, younger workforce, dealing with millennials, dealing with Gen Zers? What were your thoughts as you guys were, starting out on this process, on this journey?
Yeah. Well, we started with 13 people. We have around 300 now. And man, it's somewhat materialized. I think, our leadership group that we built, we kind of built it from the inside out. So we built
Hmm.
kind of the leaders first and then brought the people in around them. So as crazy as it sounds, we were out processing our own payrolls. We're out selling our own sales. I hadn't been on a sales call selling something in 20 or 30 years. So I think we looked for good leaders, and I think that was so important. I think when you look at a culture of leadership, which is what we tried to create here, at Puzzle, I love the Peter Drucker quote that culture eats strategy for breakfast. I can never
Mm.
remember if it's breakfast or lunch, but um, I truly believe that you have to have a culture. And for us, part of that culture that was ingrained in us is a leadership component of that. I
Good
think,
stuff.
yeah, no, and I look at it and I wrote down 6 things that I thought were important as I looked back. Is I thought it was important to hire strong people over hiring people that were good in a specific job. Meaning, if I had to pick between 2 people and one had all this experience, but I didn't think they were as strong as the other person that lacked some of that experience, I'd go with the stronger person over the
Hmm.
other person. And I thought that was important to get the right people. I think you can create and encourage strong leadership and reward it. I think some organizations don't reward strong leadership. To me, encouraging strong leadership and giving people some room to work, I think is really important. The third thing that I look at is we talked about allowing room to operate. People are going to make mistakes. It's okay. We learn from mistakes. It doesn't typically, no one gets too hurt. No one dies. But allowing people to operate was so important. I think the next thing I thought of, which is number 4, an environment for learning. We have to have a contagious environment for learning, and much of that is around leaders, strong leaders developing people underneath them, whether they're going to be leaders or not. I think it's so important.
Yeah, I'm gonna pause you right there because it sounds like because that was one of my next questions I was gonna lead into, which is that culture, right? So like what does um a leadership driven company look like? And it sounds like you're in the process of describing that. Would that be true?
Yeah, I'm trying to give you like some of the characteristics that we said were very important when you look at our initial group that came into Puzzle and said, what do we want to look like and who do we want to be?
Mm,
So I said a little bit about, making, room for mistakes. You have to have a safe environment for people to operate and be leaders. And you're not always going to agree with every decision that they have. And you have to pick and choose where you might want to contest something and where it isn't just worth it. And I think many times you can foster better leadership and more leadership by picking the right battles and picking the right fights. And some things really turn into not big issues. And you can kind of look back at it going, I probably would have done it this way versus this way. I think the last and the sixth element I would probably say as part of puzzle is team players. I think one of the things I hear internally all the time, and I love it, whether it's from the sales guys, whether it's from the service team, the service providers, the back office support team, is we're team players. People are looking out for each other when we foster that through, I think, our leadership. So to me, having a team player type mentality and environment where even though 2 people could be competing for the same job or competing for the same sale or have a position where maybe they could butt heads, having that team environment I think is so important. So
awesome.
those were the 6 things that I kind of think are attributes. I I have one more thing I probably would mention, and I want a little feedback from you on it is
Uh,
I think our overarching feeling at Puzzle is, we believe in the situational leadership model. It's
mm,
a very important model for
yeah,
us.
good
I think
stuff.
we,
Good
we,
stuff.
we brought that from other companies that we were part of. Ken Blanchard had that in, and you look at it, and there's really 4 aspects of it, and it's telling, selling, um, participating, and delegating. And the situational leadership model is really good, Derek. When you look at it should be something you're talking to somebody about before you make them a job offer. Hey, here's what you're going to
Mm,
go through here. Like we move kind of fast. Here's some elements that that are gonna impact you. I think all that's critical at the beginning stages. And it's not just for the manager to manage somebody, it's for them to understand how they're being managed. So
mm. That's good.
I'll give you a little example. So you're a sports guy, right? Basketball guy. I was a sports guy. I'll put situational leadership into maybe a sports analogy. And you can use it for academics. You can use it for a job.
Right.
Um, Anything along those lines, band, whatever you enjoy doing, dance, etc. Growing up or as a kid or still is, I likened it to, I just made the varsity team. I'm so excited, and I'm ninth grade, and I'm like, wow, I'm going to go and hang out with all those guys, and they're cool, and I'm going to be one of the cool guys, and you're so excited, right? It's like getting that first job. You're like, holy cow, I went out on some field rides and I saw how other people do it, and I'm going to be the number one sales rep. Oh, that guy made it look so easy. That lady made it look so easy. So you have all this, that in this D1, S1 kind of thing that happens to you, and you're like, then you start the job and you
Yeah.
ride that little emotional wave for a little bit, and then comes that D2, which is, holy cow, this is way harder than I think. And the
Yeah.
sports analogy is that team that I just got put on, they're all being mean to me and treating me poorly because I'm the youngest one on the team, or I'm the newest and least valued. And you go through that next stage, that D2, S2 stage, where you're second guessing. Well, did I make the right choice? What's wrong with me? Why is everybody else so good? And why was I so good before and so bad now? It's almost an overreaction to the D1 style. Then you go to D3. We talk about that as being participating. And that means you're kind of getting it, still some bumps in the
Yeah.
road,
Yeah.
but you're getting a couple of victories, right? It's like,
Yep.
wow, I got to start a game or two. Wow,
Yes.
that's wow. Maybe if I keep this up, I could play more. And then the last is that S4, that D4 style. We call those unconsciously unconsciously competent. They don't
Absolutely.
even know why they're good. They're that good, and they've been that good. Those are the people that are training somebody else for the job, and they make it look so easy. The other person's like
Yeah.
I can't even follow you. So I love the situational leadership model. I love letting people know that's what you're going to go through. And I oversimplified it. Go get the book, take some trainings, pay for some trainings from the Ken Blanchard group. But I love how we've adapted some of the situational leadership at Puzzle. So
It's funny.
I'll stop there.
I'm glad you mentioned situational leadership because I actually live that here. And we talked about the culture, and the culture here at Puzzle helped me through it, right? Because in my previous, job, I had my own company. I was out doing things. I was out in public, and almost everything I did was in person, right? So whether it be on a stage in front of thousands, or a room in front of a couple of people, what have you, it was always in person. So when I got hired here on Puzzle, they did mention, hey, this is the kind of thing you're going to go through. You're going to learn the ropes. You're going to be in D1, be all excited. D2, you're going to hit the wall. And I'll be honest with you, the competitor in me was like, I ain't worried about that, right? But presenting things in person is totally different than presenting things virtually. And I didn't understand that. So I hit that D2 wall. And I remember having to go to my leader and say, hey, you know what? This isn't as easy as I thought. You start second guessing yourself. And I had to get coached through that, right? And you think about D2 is like, hey, I mean, D1, you're starting off, you're excited, and then you hit the wall, you do a couple of virtual trainings. So I actually went through that. And we talk about culture, and I love the fact that the culture here at Puzzle helped bring me through that because my ego was a little hurt. I'm used to, getting standing ovations and so on and so forth. And all of a sudden I laid an egg virtually and I'm like, man, is this really for me kind of thing? But yeah, the culture here was great because my leader was able to coach me through that. And now I think I'm in D4. I like to think I'm in D4, but maybe
Oh,
just.
you're D4. Look at you. We're on a symposium together. You got to be D4. So
But it's
I
great. It's great.
yeah, no, I look at, and I think when you think of situational leadership, um, you know, it's not always taking on a new job, right? A task in that job could change. So we have a new way we're doing things. Everybody starts over. Now it might be smaller and shorter and quicker to get through kind of a change in your job. So it's not just changing a job where that shows up kind of in high magnitude, but
Yep.
it also is changing tasks. So it is task specific.
Absolutely. And, and when you talk about tasks, I think of skill, right? The skill of doing something in person was a lot different than doing it virtually. Good stuff, good stuff. So you think about, so I'm an old guy, I'm in my late 50s or what have you. So it was a little easier for me to deal with because I like to think I'm a little more mature than maybe some of the Gen Zers and millennials and so on and so forth. But when you think about the importance of leadership development with those younger generations, you know, it's the culture. The culture is so important. How does that affect when you think about the culture, right? How does that affect those younger generations?
Yeah, you know, first of all, I don't think there's one set group of answers for this. And it's
Mm,
funny, I did a little research on it, and some of the things I read, I'm like wholeheartedly agree, and others, I'm like, You're out there." And I looked and I said, what I wanted to see what percentage of each workforce is in the marketplace today, and 27% of the workforce are Gen Zs. So and I don't know if that's any different than the previous one, a few years into it, when the millennials or the baby boomers or the Gen X's, et cetera. So, but right now, 27% of that workforce, I think something that's even kind of more or as important is you have millennials now moving up in organizations. They're playing big leadership roles, C-suite in some cases, et cetera. So those two dynamics are both kind of happening. And what do we, how are we operating to make that function as best as possible? Uh, there's other things I think besides just when you're born that affect our
mm,
the development of our companies and our institutions, et cetera. So when you look at what we went through with the pandemic, when we looked at how kids were interacting because they weren't going to school, when you're looking at technology, all those things are that have impacted our business. Some have come out to be very good things, and others have been challenges that we've had to work through. But my personal observations when I'm talking to Gen Zs, I don't know. I read a Forbes article and I wrote down a few things that the Forbes article said. It said, and you'll like this, because you just said you're an old guy, and I'm an even older guy. It said, here's what Gen Zs want. So all you managers take notes or don't, okay? Because they're saying they want a job with a purpose.
mm,
All right. They want flexible working hours. Okay. I mean, if your company offers it, it does. If it doesn't, so when they sign on, they're going to kind of know that. Frequent communication. One of the things they said is that they have shorter attention spans,
mm.
and they said they prefer some autonomy. So me being Lonnie, I look back and say, Lonnie at 25 to 30 years old, how was I? That's how I was then. I don't know if this is completely different. There are nuances, there are some challenges, there are things that I think you need to take into consideration, but changing your whole organization around is probably not what we're recommending today. It's how can I be a more useful leader by being cognizant that there are variances in the people that work for us. So I wrote down 5 things that I try to do a little bit more with some of our younger workforces: high communication. Like I think it's important to say, here's why I did something. I I don't have to ask your permission, but I'm going to let you know why I made that decision, to
Right.
give you a little look into maybe how a CEO or an upper executive thinks. I think people are looking for personal development. You can get so much online now. You couldn't get a lot of the things when I was younger. Even Gen X's, there was limits to how much development that you could get. There's a lot of it. And people do go online and they are anxious to get more development. That is true. And I think that's something we need to do with some of these younger groups. I think in some cases they're not as equipped because a lot of them were kind of protected through the pandemic, and this
Mm,
could be their first job, right? I don't know about you, but I was a paper boy at 13. I did yards at 15. I I had a variety of jobs. So when I got my job, I had already been in the workforce probably, 8 or 10 years and worked through college, et cetera, like so many of us have. Well, for many of these younger guys and younger ladies, this could be their first job, and it's a bit unorthodox for them to be in a working environment. So I think being cognizant of that is really important. I think you need to be able to say, if you need help, you got to raise your hand. I think
Mm,
to me,
yeah.
that was my fourth thing, is understand where they're coming from, is, come from an inquisitive perspective when somebody's asking you, hey, what's going on, and create an environment where they're okay to ask questions and not feel like, hey, that was a dumb question, or, I don't agree with that. The last thing I would say, and I think this is good, I think Gen Z and the millennials have brought this to the workforce. And I personally think it's a better thing that's come out of it. I know throughout my career, every time I wanted to get a promotion, it was 5 to 7 years.
Mm,
I don't think I think that it's healthier to have smaller opportunities,
mhm.
uh, and smaller goals that they can achieve that brings them through the workforce. I think that's something that's good, that's come out of working with some of the younger generations that are out there. But those are my 5 things that I look at when I'm talking to and working with leadership and the younger generation.
Good stuff. You mentioned a couple of things. One, purpose, right? That they, excuse me, things that they want, right? They're looking for purpose, and also frequent communication. So purpose is one thing, and you talked about that, answering those, basically saying, hey, why? Why are we here? Why are we doing? Why are we heading this direction? As the visionary, as the CEO, I get that. But now, when it comes down to frequent communication, how do you facilitate? How do you make sure that happens here at Puzzle?
I think, we talk about shadow of the leader a lot here at Puzzle. I think what you do impacts others below you and impacts others below them, et cetera. So if you don't like something you see in the organization, um, I'm a big boy. I look here first, right?
Mm,
Or I blame Chris. I can do that also. But I think it starts a healthy environment starts with looking at yourself and what are you creating and how does it flow down? It's harder for grassroots things to start at the bottom and work their way up. Now, if you talking to your people and listening to them, you can foster more of that. But most things are top down, and doing them in the way that is important to you as one of the leaders in the company. I think you see it in the people below you. And if you don't see it, then blame yourself first.
absolutely. And it's important. I was thinking about, here since I've been at Puzzle, it's been almost what, 2 years, and thinking about the frequency of communication. And like you said, there's times, like you said, top down is key, right? Because if you're not doing it, you, CEO, if you're not doing it, then guess what? Then the VPs and directors and managers and so on and so forth, what's going to cause them to do it, right? And like you said, it's a top down thing. It's awesome to see that. So here's one thing that I've encountered quite a few times when I'm dealing with clients, right? So when clients come to us, come to Puzzle, they're getting trained, and they mention the things that you mentioned and talked about the attention span. What are your thoughts around that? The attention span of some of the younger folks, and how should a leader deal with that?
Well, I gotta tell you, and I was one of those ones that had a short attention span. But I did know this. I don't think it's any different with teaching. I don't think it's any different with parenting. Uh, you have to keep them engaged, and you have to be that. Remember, the first thing I said was emotional intelligence, like one of the best leadership. Knowing who's across from you or reading the room is really important to know how fast to go or how deep to go or how complex to go. So I think people can get bored easy. It is an instantaneous life that we kind of have now. You get things instantaneously. You can order something in the morning, have it delivered, a few hours later. So there is that instantaneous nature of things. So I think making sure that you're hitting the mark and reading the people properly or the person properly. I would also add that don't hire somebody looking to change them. So if you see that somebody has a trait that you really like, work on bringing out that trait instead of focusing on maybe what they don't have and trying to change completely who they are. And you could probably compare that. You hear that maybe football a little bit with certain coaches, is they know where they kind of where they what they can do, and they have them do that, and that helps that team succeed. They don't ask them to block if they're a terrible blocker. So does that mean you abandon trying to develop people in their weaknesses? Probably not. But you also, I think, when you recognize where their strengths are, bringing those strengths out are pretty important, because that's why you hired them to begin with.
Absolutely.
That,
You know,
that answer
it's
that?
absolutely. You know, and there was as you were talking, I remember I think it was John Maxwell had mentioned that wherever you are developmentally, like say on a scale of 1 to 10, like say if I'm a 5, he says you can work as hard as you want. The most you'll probably gain is like from a 5 to a 7. You'll probably add 2 points, right? He says, but if you are like a 7 and you get up to a 9, people pay for nines. People pay big money for nine. No, hardly anybody is a 10, right? And I started thinking about that. And even as we talk about those those future leaders, right? I want to dive into that a little bit. And it's also you said something about not doesn't matter where you're born, and it's interesting. I saw an article, there was a video interview, and this gentleman, I forget his name, but he's now the CEO of Red Lobster. He was the CEO of PF Chang's, but Red Lobster was going through some issues, and they
Right.
hired him to help steer the ship. I do believe he's like 35 years old. Think about that for me, right?
Yeah.
Think
Yeah.
about the kind of environment he must have been in. And that leads me to my next question, which talks about nurturing those future leaders, right? So somewhere along the line, he was a 20-year-old, he was a 22-year-old, and somebody took him under their wing and nurtured that future leader. Now he's been the CEO of two major, franchises. So talk to me about how do you, the CEO of Puzzle, how do you identify and nurture future leaders?
Yeah. I think if you identify, nurturing's easy.
Hmm.
Right? Not identifying properly and nurturing might not have any payback, right? So I think I like the identifying future leaders, honestly. That I think that's important. I'm a big fan of Jim Collins, and he had the book Good to Great. And one of the comments that he had was, it's important to get the right people on the bus and
Mhm.
then find the seats. And I look at puzzle like that. I look at kind of my career like that. I look at people that came to puzzle. I like people are like, oh, you guys were so smart. You guys knew that we didn't know that this was coming, but we knew we had some really good people we had to get on the bus. And many of us have played multiple roles since puzzle has started. I know it probably drives, if there's any of our employees on this call, probably drives some of them crazy. It is a
I-
compliment, right? It is a compliment to have somebody come to you going, hey, we're scrapping what we were doing before, but we're going to do this with these people because this is the best utilization of what we can do with them. And I think that's important. I think Jim Collins he did a lot of great comments, but that to me really resonates. So when I think about identifying, I think it's whether it's I think it's whether it's internally or let's just take externally. So you're going to add somebody onto your company. I think that is so important. Like you can get a lot right and you hire the wrong people, it's not gonna end well. So I think there's three things that you guys probably hear a lot at Puzzle that we talk about. And the first element that we look at in hiring is good attitude. And when we talk about, and I say good, we're trying to get great attitude. And I think that's so important. When you think of attitude, it doesn't matter if you're meeting somebody live or like this or only via phone. Like what's that initial impression that person makes on you?
Hmm.
Like if you're meeting them in person, what is the handshake? What is the eye contact? What's the sense of humor? you're evaluating a lot of things when you look at attitude, and it's imperative to have the right attitude. Do you want to be around a bunch of people that like being at their job and enjoy being here? It's kind of important. We were on a call recently and we were talking about how do we continue to improve customer service, and somebody said, I worked at Disney, and you could like see Disney, you could feel Disney. Well, that's attitude. Same way, like that Disney kind of attitude, that puzzle kind of attitude, the companies that are growing and dynamic, hiring people with a great attitude is so important. So that was number one. Number two is accountability. And here's how I would talk about accountability. You know, when you look at a resume, what does the resume tell you? Whether it's a hiring for a C-level person or hiring somebody for maybe their second or third job. Can you look at it and see the accountability of what they've done in their life? And are they growing? Are you catching them on the way up? Are you catching them on the way down? Or are you catching them
Mhm.
in the middle? And I think accountability is I can look at that and say, I know where this person's going. And they can explain it well to me. They talk to me about why you made that decision. And you might say, hey, this is their first job. Their resume is I was class this and class that. But you can look at things, and I think look at academics. I think you can look at um, hobbies. I think you can look at achievements. I think you can look at sports and derive from that what are you getting? What does this person work through? Because what are you trying to do with accountability? Getting them to replicate it here, right?
Right.
And I'm a Myers-Briggs guy. I won't get into that, but you know, I didn't do a lot of hiring expecting something different to happen with somebody that they hadn't already shown me in that piece of paper. The piece of paper was less about what jobs have you held. It was more about why did you move from this position to this position? Why did you move down? Why did you go to maybe a company I would say wasn't as good as the company before? But if you can explain it, that's great. But accountability was the second factor. And then the third is so important. And this is the one most companies get wrong, most hiring managers get wrong. It's fit. So you can
Mhm.
have somebody with a great attitude, you can have somebody with a really good resume and high accountability and say, wow, that's fantastic. And then you ask them to do something that they're not necessarily willing to do. That
Gotcha.
fit goes out the window, the person gets out, and it's disastrous. Then you got to let somebody go that has a great attitude, which really stinks. But fit, if you're going to spend time in fit, because people can capture, I think, attitude. You get tricked once in a while. I think they can look at a resume and go, okay, is the bar going up? Is it like a stock? Is it going
Right.
up? But I think you look at fit is from what they say they want to do, or when you ask them in a interview, Derek, describe the perfect job, and they describe something different than they're interviewing for, that might not be a great fit, right? So I think that
Absolutely.
that fit is so important. I would add one other factor, and you're probably better at this than me, so I'll let you answer this. But we do a behavior assessments, right? Like Omnia.
Uh-huh.
How do we use Omnia, and how do our clients use Omnia to make sure we're hiring and promoting the best person for that position?
That's a good question. Before we move to that, I'm going back to attitude. We have a question from one of the
So
participants.
it's got to
And
be
it
an easy
says,
one.
do you hire a good attitude versus someone that has the skills, but the attitude is just okay?
Don't settle on attitude. Like, look, I've been in the workforce a long time. There's a lot of people who are very gifted at their job that aren't great at working with other people. So I would say there's few positions that maybe work independently that attitude could be a little less important, but I'd never settle on good attitude or a good resume. I would always say hire the person uh, with the attitude over the person with the resume. And granted, if one is exceptional and the other is not great, then then maybe there's some conversation. But knowing that somebody might be more skilled in certain ways that others aren't, I'd still go with attitude, knowing that I can bring them in, and that positive attitude is going to get them to learn some of the things they might be deficient in.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. All right, so I'm gonna answer your question as far as Omni is concerned. That that's a behavior assessment, and I think it falls in line with fit, right? You want to make sure that when you're doing talent acquisition, that you're finding the right fit. You had mentioned that once people are in, trying to find people to get on the bus, right? Make sure all the right people are on the bus, and then find the right seats on the bus. So what Omnia, what a lot of our clients who use Omnia, that's what they're using Omnia for. They're trying to find that right fit. But before, should they even be on the bus, right? And there's nothing wrong. It's just that in certain jobs, certain skill sets as far as and personalities and so on and so forth, help, so Omnia helps find that good fit. Does that make sense? Because
Yeah.
that's one of the things that we use here at Puzzle, and we also work with clients on that. So it's very important that we and also that we use the tool the right way, because sometimes Omnia can be used improperly, right? You start to
Right.
have
Like
bias.
any assessment, right?
Exactly. You start to have a bias towards someone. So it's always good to have people come in and teach you how to use those tools correctly.
I think it's a good cheat sheet for fit. Like it is another piece of the puzzle. We're talking puzzle. I saw Cheryl on here. I'm sorry, Cheryl, it came up quickly. But one of the questions she had, and just real quickly, is what if you have a long-term employee? Like you inherited them and the attitude's not necessarily there. That's a great question. I would say look at you know, there's factors in order to work in your organization if you're a leader. There's key characteristics, and if one of the characteristics, which I think should be attitude, and I used to have 7 kind of golden rules. Those golden rules were ones that I would follow. The first one was always good attitude. So to answer Cheryl's question, if the manager sees that the attitude's not where it should be, then they need to hold that person accountable for it. And you know what? Everybody needs a little, kick sometime in the rear or a pat on the back to pull them out of something. So I'm not always in a great state of mind, and I'm sure everybody else isn't. You can expect that in a short period of time, but if it's elongated, then I think the manager needs to say, "Hey, look, you don't look like you love it here." Like, so I have 2 questions. How do we change that? Or is there something else that you want to do that would make you want to come to work every day?
That's a
And
good
you're
point.
right. And that seems like a really tough question. It's not. That's crucial conversations, which that is because you're throwing it out there, right, Derek? You're going, hey, maybe you really don't want to be here. And that's an okay conversation to have with somebody because they're going to do 2 things from that discussion. They're going to go, wow, maybe I am showing up kind of crappy. Or you're right, I don't really love what I'm doing. Maybe I would enjoy, I always wanted to be a fireman, right? Or something else, and it's not, maybe I need to go do that because I'm not as happy here as I could be.
Yeah,
All
you
right,
know
so
what?
we go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, when it comes down to those longer term employees, it also could be that they may not be in the right seat,
Yeah, could
right?
be.
So it could be like say somebody might be having an issue here at Puzzle. Maybe it's that, they may not be good in sales, but maybe they need to move over to focus on marketing, or maybe all of a sudden they want to take Derek's job and they want to do what I'm doing, right?
Yeah. But I would say this, until you show the good attitude, we're not doing anything with you. Like
That's a good point.
you gotta come to the plate, right? And I tell younger people that want to move up and you got to look the part, act the part, and show the part of the next job before you get it.
Or you can be the
So,
part.
yeah. So when you interview for it, you're the easiest decision to make because you've been showing all the key ingredients, if you will, to have that job.
So I like that. So if I was a young person,
You're young. You're still young. Go ahead.
so if I was a Gen Zer, a millennial, and I'm like, wow, and I'm working at Puzzle, could be working anywhere, but I'm working at Puzzle. What would be so like we talked about it, but what would be like the main traits? And I like what you just said was it look the part? What would you just said, look the part, do the part, whatever it is, what would I need to do to make sure that I'm seen or I shine, or like they say cream rises to the top? What would I do to make sure that I'm seen by you or leadership or whatever if I'm looking to, rise in the company
It's
and
a
become a
great.
leader?
That's a great. We didn't practice this, so there's no notes on this. Uh, I would tell you, having a bigger impact than what your job requires,
Mm,
right? And I don't, you know, I look at like Malia and I look at Doug Murphy, but before he got promoted, he acted like a manager beforehand. I mean, I was reporting to him, I thought at one point. So, the impact that you have on your organization makes it so critical because we can see that. And there's a ton more, Brianna and Elizabeth and Liz, and I'm leaving people out. But those people, Shannon and Mel, like you can see before they got promoted why they should be promoted.
mm,
And so I'd say impact would be one of those things, Derek. I would say having a more strategic view. Like, hey, I love puzzle, but do you guys know we're losing clients because of X, Y, and Z? And it's like, hey, that isn't even in your area. Like, so they have an impact beyond their little world that they live in,
uh,
right? That you
absolutely.
go, wow, this person cares probably more than they need to. So I would say that element of it, I would say, things like that attitude that we talked about, that's not just for hiring, that's internal. It's like, you have the attitude, like, I want them to influence, because, most leaders manage about 7 people. Wow, if I promoted that person with that great attitude, that means I'm gonna have 7 more people just like them eventually. If they're good leaders, they start to look just like them. So I think you see that. I think people that ask for more, people that I know are improving themselves without me having to tell them. It's like, oh, I'm getting my master's, right? Hey, I just got another certification, right? Kathleen Daniels is, all I do is on LinkedIn is compliment her because she's president of everything. So those are people you just look at and just go, wow, they want more. So hopefully that was 3 or 4 or 5 things that I gave you. Did I answer
Awesome,
that?
awesome, awesome. Good stuff, good stuff. So I'm going to move a little bit. So think about, I want you to think internally, right? Think about some of the best leadership lessons you've learned. You've had a successful career. You're the CEO of Puzzle. What are some of the best leadership lessons you've learned? You think about
Oh,
some of the people on this call, their leaders, managers, what have you, and they might be able to glean something from some of those lessons that you've learned.
wow. I'd say, geez. I'd probably start with if you don't develop yourself, the people below you won't be developed.
Mm,
And if I do develop myself, Chris will laugh, and Marion and Dan Fleiss, guys that have been with me a long period of time. I read this book on top grading, right? It was when top grading came out. It was probably, I don't know, 2000. So before a lot of the people were born that we're talking about.
okay.
But it was a great book because it talked about what an A player looks like.
Mm,
So, and it talked about how to get a team of A players and B players and what a C person looked like and the characteristics of those things like that. Well, the long story of that is that what I learned from develop yourself first and you'll develop your team is by me reading that book, everybody else in my organization did because it
mm,
became something that we talked about, that we instilled in our organization. So if I hadn't developed me, they all would have been lacking because of that. So everything you do, that
mm.
podcast you listen to and
Yeah.
develop yourself, or there's something you want to bring to the table, or my horrible white-tailed deer story for poor Bert that has to set through it. Uh, each of those things you hand down, yeah, you heard that right, white-tailed deer, that you have to that you bring down to the people below you, and the more you do it, the more it benefits them. So that would be number one lesson I learned. Uh, I always found that hiring people that were a little stronger
Mm,
was more important than hiring people that had to be told everything to do. And I'll give you an example. It was easier for me to manage somebody that was stronger um, because I wanted them to be good leaders and strong and ooze that out of their pores was really important because I could handle them getting out of line a little bit. but I could never make somebody that wasn't passionate or strong. So I had a lot better history of making strong people behave than I ever had making weaker individuals or weaker leaders tougher. I struck out most of the time with that. So that'd be another lesson. Did you like that one?
Yeah, that was good. It reminds me of when I was coaching, right? When it came down to picking players, I always wanted the players with a lot of passion, a lot of fire, because it was a little easier to tame the fire than it was to start one. And that goes back to what you were saying. You want somebody who's strong, right? Because trying to make somebody weak stronger usually doesn't work out.
Yeah, that's great. And it shows up in sports a lot,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So,
absolutely.
so, so I'd say another lesson, number three, would probably be uh, a leader. When you know you're a good leader or even a good manager, because there's attributes that are pretty similar to both, right? And you need elements of both. But I knew I wanted to be a leader because I got way more satisfaction out of my person winning than Lonnie winning.
Mm,
And that to me was a big lesson. That was, there's people that get into management and leadership for all the wrong reasons. If you don't get satisfaction by your person winning more than you, then you're probably a better individual contributor than you are a leader or a manager. And that goes with money, that goes with other things. Sometimes people want to be leaders or managers because, oh, I get to tell people what to do, I get more money, I have more say in what's going on. The most important element to me, and I think our organization at Puzzle is, do you get more out of seeing your people win than you win?
good
That's
stuff.
number three. So I got two more. You want two more or not? How are we doing
You
on
know
time?
what? Hold on. Before you go, though, did we have a question that came in from Tabitha? She says, I am in management and have a hard time like representing as a leader. What is the best way to do this and be a good leader? Hard time. It's like she's saying representing as a leader. Reprimanding. I'm sorry.
Reprimanding.
Reprimanding. All right.
Oh, so you know what? That's a tough one for a lot of people. That book, Crucial Conversations, is a really good book. If you get a chance to read that, I would say I had when I was a new manager, I had a little bit of problem with this. But I said, do I care about the people enough to give them tough news? And I kind of turned it the opposite way. It's like, oh, I want to protect them, and I have trouble reprimanding them. I'm going, this person has this issue. Would I allow them to continue to do this? And by the way, it's a great question. I think I think when you look at it and you say, I'm doing somebody a service, many of the times the challenges our people have at work are the same challenges. This is a secret. I just want you guys to hear it. Are the same problems they have at home. Are the same problems they have other places. Like what you see you don't like in Lonnie, my wife has to deal with, guys. So when you develop yourself at work, you're also developing yourself there. So I think having that more altruistic look at it is, if I really care about them, I will reprimand them because ultimately it'll be good for them. And I think Crucial Conversation helps. And I think I saw somebody on there that says, get into Level Up. We have some, free Level Up programs, and Next Level is another program we have. Those are great to bring that out. And I think we do Crucial Conversations in that one.
Yeah, we actually call it managing conflict. Yeah.
Ah,
And that's
there you
key.
go.
You know what? It's key because a lot of times, if you get good at managing conflict, you can head things off before you get to the point where you got to reprimand someone.
Yeah, and if you inherit somebody, I would always say a new person taking over a team. I always thought it was really important. Or what are your rules of being on this team? So let's say it's my first day and I've got, there's 7 chairs here in front of me, and I got 7 people in the room. Like, hey, my name's Lonnie. Here's who I am. I'm a dad. I'm a husband. I'm this. I'm that. I'm so happy to be on your team. I'm so excited. Let me just go through the rules of being on the team that I think is important, and we're going to hold all Each of us are going to hold each of us accountable for these. And one of them is going to be attitude. One of them is going to be, I had the same seven, throughout my career, but it's going to be showing up on time. It's going to be how we operate as teammates and help each other, respect. And there was the same seven things. Well, what does that do? Right. So, Tabitha was asking, what does that do? That gives you permission to hold everybody accountable. So if you haven't done that with your team and it's the start of a new year, maybe not a bad time to create those golden rules that we were talking about.
When you mentioned those golden rules, I remember when I first got here at Puzzle, one of the things that my leader mentioned to me was the core values, cares, right? Where the C
Yeah,
in cares is about, collaboration, and A is for accountability, relationships, E for empathy, and I love the last one, smile, right? We
yeah,
approach everything with a smile. And you're right, because there have been times when, folks have to be held accountable to that, right? Those are those so-called golden rules, those values. I guess the question would be, first of all, it's interesting, as I dealt with a few clients and I ask them about that, what are your core values? And at times, believe it or not, I get crickets. Like they'll mention things like goals. I'm like, yeah, those are goals, but your core values, that basically tells people how you show up, right? Just like
yeah.
with our cares values. That's good stuff. We got like 10 minutes to go. I'm gonna jump into some tools because we'll leave some time for looks like we have rules of engagement for teams is a great idea and critical to unify and bind all members regardless of generation. And
Yeah. Who was
first,
that? Lisa Kernan? Did I see
yeah,
that?
yes,
She's
yes, you
got,
did.
she's had some good, by the way, she's one of my old trainers. Lisa, you did good. Thank you.
I like this. Michelle says, I think we tend to view conflict through a negative lens. Conflict creates opportunity to bond and
That's right.
strengthen a relationship while searching for a common solution. That's awesome. That's awesome. Because that's I always say, conflict is not always, something we should look at as, oh my God. But that's the thing. The biggest problem we have when we work with clients on dealing with conflict, the biggest thing is fear of it.
Yeah.
That's the
And you
biggest
know
thing.
what? The fear is way worse than reality.
Mhm.
Here's what I tell all new managers is if there's something you need to address and it's going to be a little painful, just start talking. And
That's
it's okay to say, look, I'm going to be talking to you about something that might be a little bit painful for you today, but I think it's important for you and I to get on the same page. Doesn't mean you're a bad person, doesn't mean that I don't like you, but we need to talk about it. You
yes.
set the ground rules right there for it. So
Okay, now watch this. We got another question that's coming in. What can organizations do to build future leaders, build their confidence and decision-making abilities, especially in like high, pressure situations?
yeah, no, great question. Look at leadership's not an accident. So I know we talked about cares, we talked about some of the key things that are important to puzzle, right? On how we operate, how we function as a company. I think you got to establish who your company is, right? With putting some of those expectations that are needed to be out there. And it's hard, Puzzle offers a lot from leadership development. So we go in and train, large and small groups. It is hard to run your business and be an expert trainer and figure out where to
Mhm.
do that. We do offer some things. So reach out to whoever you're working with at Puzzle. We do offer some free things they're great. I think our level up is
Yep.
fantastic. I think we have between 30 and 50 people in that a couple times a week where it's free training for managers to get on, learn about certain subjects so you can pick and choose. And then we offer programs where we go in and just train people and try to make it very affordable for an organization to say, I'm here, I want to get here. How can you help me do that? And we can help you do that. But I think that person start with what you want it to look like and then begin to build on it. And if you want to send me some emails, or I don't know if you're a prospect or a client that's not utilizing some of our stuff, hit me up, Lonnie at puzzlehr.com.
Awesome, awesome. And you're right. So, that's one of the things I would have suggested as well, that there should be some level of training involved. And I guess, hey, I do that for a living. So, and it should include some stress management, because they talked about that high stress, high stress situations. But also, you mentioned that, hey, guess what? They may not be the best, as a leader, you may not be the best trainer, but you can learn to mentor, right? And learn to mentor, those younger leaders, that future generation, and mentor them into that leadership. And of course, as I always say with anything, is practice, 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 but not just practice. You want to make sure you're practicing the right things, right? So you want to give them opportunities to have those real world applications, because that's where they'll learn, right? And it's a real world situation. They might bump their head or whatever, but that'll help build their confidence going into the future.
Right. There's
Oh,
people that mentor people without us having to ask. Those are the best.
yeah.
Like, hey, I brought this person. Like, how do you know that person? Oh, we talk sometimes, right? Dawn's great at that. Dawn, I talk to somebody, and Dawn will help out somebody. She hit me up with a text. I'm sorry, Dawn, I didn't get back to you on how she might be able to help somebody have more success. That's what you're looking for.
Good stuff. Good stuff. We got a few minutes to go. I'm going to ask you this question. What are some tools, right? Think of some your go-to leadership books, whether it be podcasts or whatever. What are some of the recommended tools that you would have for folks on the call?
Yeah, no, that's a good one. Look at, I don't need to write that down and practice that one at all. Um, but I said earlier, big proponent of situational leadership, right? I
Mhm.
think that's worth buying and purchasing for your company and getting trained on, et cetera. I just think that model's one that I truly believe in. I love Pygmalion in management. And Pygmalion in Management is a Harvard review, and it's eons ago, but I think it still pertains very well to today. I think behaviors are behaviors regardless. But basically, Pygmalion in Management says people will rise to the level of what expectations you have in them. So if you don't believe somebody, they'll raise to that expectation, and if you think they're going to be great, they'll rise to that. And you don't have to look any further than teachers, right? And they do some studies and stuff on teachers that they say, oh, you have the brightest kids in your class. They're all, and they aren't. It's like a placebo effect. They're like, we'll tell them this, and then the kids end up getting all the best grades because the teacher believes in that. I really believe in Pygmalion and management, that people rise to the level that you believe in them, and if you don't, they'll rise to that level also. I love monkey management. It saved my career a long time ago. Again, an oldie but goodie. That's basically, too many managers take on responsibilities that are people instead of making their people take on those responsibilities, and you become an ineffective manager. So monkey management was really important to me. Uh, the last I would say is 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. I love that
Ah,
one. It's an oldie. It's a old, not crazy old, but oldie but goodie. And it
yeah.
talked about what are the characteristics of great leaders and their small chapters. And man, we use the words and the vernacular all the time here at Puzzle. I do, but I love 21 Irrefutable Laws. I would also probably add podcasts. I love podcasts. I love Simon Sinek
Oh,
is
one of my favorites.
awesome. Right. You like him. I love TED Talks. And I think keeping yourself um, educated and focused in areas that you need to get better, I think is just going to have that ultimate effect of making everybody below you better. So
Good stuff.
yeah,
Good stuff.
that's some of my stuff. You have a go-to that I missed? What one did you
Well,
we're hoping?
you mentioned the 21 Irrefutable Laws. That's by John Maxwell. And when you mentioned it, I thought of he wrote this book. It's not as old as that one. It's called Leadership.
Yeah,
Leadership by John Maxwell. And it has this, I remember reading recently, there was this one chapter on shifting from directing to connecting. And when I thought about the millennials, and I thought about some of the Gen Zers and the needs that they need us to do more connecting versus directing, right? And when you think about directing versus connecting, if I remember correctly, it was like being less authoritative and more collaborative, doing less talking and more listening. And I do believe when it came down to, a lot of us leaders, we like to give answers. And they were saying as a leader, you want to shift more into asking questions. But yeah, but it's
yeah.
Leader Shift by John Maxwell. And it was talking about different shifts that leaders need to make in order to be more successful as leaders. Good
I
stuff.
think that's a good, I would probably leave you with this. I think leadership is about relationships. I think it's okay to have good relationships. It's okay to know about families and people and have a relationship. You can still manage and lead people and know about them and care about them. To me, I wouldn't know how to do it any other way. But I think to me, that's the best way to lead. So anyways,
Awesome. Awesome.
thought a good one, good one maybe to end on. Is there any last questions?
No, but somebody says, Lisa Marie Kern says, yeah, breakfast at Tiffany's. Example of was that Pygmalion in leadership.
Yeah. Look at Lisa. Lisa, we didn't even ask you to chime in on all this stuff. Thank you for helping our symposium today.
Awesome,
Derek, I
awesome.
appreciate you, buddy. Thanks for doing this
Hey, no
for
worries.
us.
I feel honored to have been here and get a chance to share and pick your brain and learn a few things. I'm glad this is being recorded because I didn't get a chance to take notes because I'm asking all the questions. But yeah, this is awesome. This has been great, great.
We appreciate you guys. If there's anything we can do to help, reach out. You guys can email if you have questions. If I can help you, I'll try to help you. And we appreciate you. And thanks for taking a little time to spend with us.
Awesome, awesome. Have a good one, guys.